Good morning. I think we'll get started. It sounds like most of the people have found their rooms, so thank you very much for coming. I have a couple of questions I'd like to ask first before I get started, just so I know a little bit about audience members and what your interests are, so I can tailor the presentation to what you're interested in. First of all, how many of you come from institutions that have information security programs? Everybody, almost. And how many of you are running those information security programs through ground-based labs? Nobody. And so the rest of you do some sort of virtualized software that's available for people in information assurance and security, or is it, do you have virtualized software for, yes, some people? Okay, so that explains a little bit. So what I will describe to you this morning what we've done at Capella University for cybersecurity education, and talk through some of the challenges and some of the ways that we've met those challenges of being able to deal with cybersecurity education. One thing to know about Capella University is that we're totally online. So it means that we can't have ground-based labs because we have students from all over the United States and often in many other countries, including service people working in Afghanistan or Iraq. So we need to be able to create environments for those students to work in that let them be online and let them get at the same time, the same tools that people use in industry. So we're very concerned about making sure that the students have hands-on tools wherever they are and that they have easy access to them. So I'm going to show you, okay. So I'm going to show you a little bit of a video to preview this, to explain what we've done in general, how we've gone about it, and then I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of the specifics that relate particularly to information assurance and security. Capella is a center of excellence for the NSA and Department of Homeland Security, so it's very important to us that we meet all the standards that they have and that we're able to provide the kinds of technical education, especially that the new standards ask for. So there's a lot of things in the new standards about computer forensics, about network defense, protection, both black hat and white hat kinds of activities for those of you familiar with this area. So we've worked hard to make sure that those actions can be replicated in the virtual environment. So I'm going to start by showing a very short video and letting you get a feel for what this environment is all about.
Step into your future with a career in information technology, one of the fastest growing fields in today's job marketplace. Capella University and Toolwire have partnered to create a unique virtual lab environment. Information technology programs include hands-on learning with unlimited access to a fully immersive IT infrastructure from any desktop or laptop with an internet connection. Over 50 courses offer practical, reality-based learning in interactive labs, and virtual platforms allow learners to develop skills by practicing with tools used in the real world. Examples include hands-on experience with Cisco tools, developing a database using Oracle, or creating apps using Android development tools. Your education might involve programming, where you work step by step through writing, debugging, and running code, using Eclipse in an integrated development environment. If you are interested in managing project teams, you'll use industry standard software, such as Microsoft Project and Visio, to navigate the architecture of a complex enterprise-wide network system. These virtual lab environments create a safe platform for learning, where making mistakes doesn't mean losing the job. The tools used in the Toolwire Higher Education virtual environment prepare you with the essential components of an IT career. Capella is excited to take this virtual lab one step further by introducing our hardened, secure lab environment. individuals interested in information assurance and security now have the ability to learn about hacking, encryption, forensics, and network defense without fear that they will negatively impact the rest of the internet. In this environment, you are challenged to demonstrate data encryption techniques, learn penetration testing through the mind of a hacker, and explore computer forensics using EnCase, state-of-the-art technology used by law enforcement and federal investigators. These experiences continue with education in audit control, log analysis, building a chain of custody, and writing incident reports for executive management. You can manage real-time responses to security breaches using Nessus to perform vulnerability assessments, including system sanitizing and hardening. At Capella, IT education takes you beyond the pages of a textbook. With live access to a complete network of IT tools, you have the ability to learn anywhere, at any time. Advance your career with Capella University, your partner in learning, providing practical training for the real world.
So there were a couple of things in there. I noticed some nods at some points that one of the challenges for information security is that you want to teach people how to be bad guys, but they've got to be bad guys in an environment where they can't interrupt anything and where the NSA won't come after us quickly because of the bad actor kinds of things that students are learning how to do. So when they're learning how to hack, they have to be able to stay in an enclosed environment. One of the things about this marketplace is that it's growing in a very large way. For those of you who are in this, you know that this is a marketplace where there's high demand. The interesting thing at Capella is that we're training a lot of people to go into information assurance and security, but we also hire a lot of people to secure our own environments. So we know how big the demand is and what some of the skills are that people really need. We're a great example of a place that needs to be a very secure environment and make sure that some people who would very much like to come after us can't get to the student information or any of our servers that provide software or courseware to students. So the demand is growing immensely. Our learner profile is a little different in many cases than profiles of other institutions, just so that you understand the learners that we're dealing with, the students. We are about 25% bachelor's degree level and 30% doctoral degrees. This is overall Capella. You'll notice that it says overall Capella is 74% female and 26% male. So it seems unusual. In IT, we always thought of ourselves as being primarily male because it's exactly flipped. So it's really 60% male and 40% female. But even at the 40% female rate, we recognized that we were attracting many more women in this space than many other institutions. So we're very friendly to women, to persons of color. 54% of our students are students of color. And among the for-profits, we feel that we've achieved some level of understanding of quality. So our alumni satisfaction rate is quite high. And students are highly likely to complete. We've worked hard on getting accreditations and designations, and those of you who work with the Center of Excellence designation know that that's been a challenge in the last couple of years, trying to keep up with the changing standards that the NSA and DHS have created. The CNSS is on its way out, but we think there are other certificates that they want us to be able to give. And then we're also ABET accredited. So keeping track of all of those standards and the things that are needed is very important to us, and we need to be able to work with groups that understand when we have to change things and why we have to do that. The biggest thing that's become important in the last few years is making sure that the hands-on experience that learners get is really related directly to the profession that they will go into. because so many of our students are 40 years old, they may have had certifications in the field of security previously, or they came from the military. We need to make sure that they're likely to be able to get a job immediately upon graduation, or that the job that they're in, they'll be able to advance in. So it's not like we're trying to get people immediately into the workforce as a 24-year-old with their very beginning experience. We're challenged to make sure that we are up to speed with the latest and most important things that are being used in the workplace today. So we need to be very professionally aligned as well as aligned with the standards. Our faculty themselves are mainly practitioners who came from the field but also have academic degrees. And most of all, the assignments that we want to give are really real-world assignments. So our challenge has been to many people that we don't want to do things in a step-by-step fashion. We want to make sure that students actually are working on problem sets that demonstrate the kinds of things that they might experience in the real world. So they're what I like to call messy problems, the kinds that all of us deal with every day, the kinds of things that don't have any right answers, and that they need to be able to go through the experience just like someone would in the workplace. So we have a very student-centered approach. We're entirely competency-based. We also have announced a totally competency-based curriculum in this same area as well that is based on students being able to complete things at their own rate, their own time, and demonstrate the competencies. So it's important to us that the assignments that we give are things where we can really assess the students' abilities and understand whether or not they can apply the theory that they've been reading about or learning in the course room. These are examples of some of the courses and labs that we've put together, and it shows you the wide variety of things that you need to be able to do in an information assurance and security curriculum. And for each of these, because these are the courses in red at the top and the labs are underneath that, it shows you the variety of software and labs that you need to be able to do. So in the cyber attacks and ethical hacking, there are many components to what you have to do to be able to demonstrate that you understand an attack, you would know how to attack something, and you also know how to protect against it when you get to cyber defense and countermeasures. And there are certain tools that you need to be able to use in each of those. So we want to make sure that the tools that they're using actually reflect the real world experience. So they may use Snort, they may use Linux, they may use Encase. And those are all things that you're likely to encounter in the real world environment. So they need to know how to do that. We don't want to give them just samples of things. It's the actual software that someone else might use. And a little bit later, I'm going to talk about the capture the flag competition, or someone are calling them cybersecurity competitions, cyber patriot competitions. But this is an example of an area where you need to be able to demonstrate as part of a team your ability to both defend a network and to attack someone else's network. And it's something that's very important. A lot of people are doing these today in weekend events. And we needed to be able to demonstrate that we could do this in a virtual environment, totally asynchronously, and accomplish the same things and have people be able to demonstrate the same things. So one of the most important things is that we needed to be sure that students were working in a really secure or padded environment, an environment where whatever they were doing couldn't escape from that environment. So we needed to make, and we also needed to make sure that our students could use either PCs or Macs, that there was real consistency in what they would see and experience, and that they'd be able to place their work in a digital locker so that the instructor would be able to see it and it could be maintained over time. So we had to have a place where we knew that all of these things would happen, and students could be able to use the latest and greatest software. We were able to do that because of our work with ToolWire. We have a couple of representatives in the front row here, Ron Kempreski and Cameron Crow, and Toolwire, after we did an RFP and we looked around for who could best provide this to us, and we learned that not only could they provide us with the environments and the consistency and the ability to virtualize, they also were very familiar with paying for licensing fees. They knew the products. The people were very understanding of the need to create a high level of security. And they were really excited about the capture the flag scenario. It was great to work with them and begin to set these up. These are just a few of the things that are licensed and that we use. Not all of these are used in our information assurance and security courses. Some are used for our other courses in project management, system development, web development, but the important thing is that you see that there are a lot of tools that you need to use to demonstrate to students. Each of these has sort of a different kind of licensing requirement, a different way of being able to make it available to students. EnCase is probably the toughest of all of these. Some of these are open source, some are not. So in order to be able to provide a real world experience, you need to be able to provide a high variety of the types of software and materials that you're using. So you can see that the other thing is that we need to be able to provide a lot of different kinds of operating system experience. It's not just Windows, and we need to be able to make sure that we can provide those different kinds of experiences. And one thing to note is that a lot of these are things that students can't necessarily load onto their own laptops, and in a ground-based environment, it's often very difficult to be able to make sure that enough instances are available or that people are able to use this easily. So it's a challenging environment to be able to create what you need, and you need to be able to think through the many different versions of software that you need and how you make that available. So I want to give you a little tour of the environment and the use of EnCase in particular. Since EnCase is an industry-wide standard, most people use that as part of digital forensics, and it's one of the more challenging packages to make available to people. So we wanted to demonstrate to you one, and I also wanted to demonstrate one of the actual assignments and what they look like. So
welcome to this quick tour of the EnCase Forensics Virtual Desktop Lab. This lab immerses students in the role of an assistant to a crime scene analyst working on the case of the State versus Peterson. Norman Peterson is being investigated for bond forgery. James Santini, the owner of a used car dealership, provides low-end cars to 4x4 exhibition shows and sells the crushed cars across state lines to Nick Burns' scrapyard. According to the state, Santini hides fraudulent bonds produced by Peterson inside the crushed cars. Peterson is claiming that he has never heard of either James Santini or Nick Burns, who is an alleged conspirator in the case. Using EnCase, students must detect, recover, and prepare deleted files from Peterson's computer containing evidence that can be used in court. A README file on the desktop provides students with detailed instructions on tasks commonly performed by crime scene analysts. For example, the third task involves basic EnCase navigation and viewing files. Selections made in the navigation tree will affect what is seen in the table pane, and selections in the table pane affect the view pane at the bottom. Students are asked to check Peterson's race picks in the navigation tree. After completing the initial steps, students are instructed to select item 47, the JPEG titled Santini's Car. By virtue of the fact that there is a picture called Santini's Car on Peterson's flash drive, we see that Peterson is not being completely honest when he claims not to know James Santini. Although this evidence is only circumstantial, it may be enough to warrant a deeper investigation into Peterson. The goal is to find links to Santini and Burns, and we accomplish this goal.
So I have to say that one of the things I learned by working through some of these exercises is that I could not be a digital forensics expert. I have too much ADD to be able to do the exercises that you need to be able to do because they're very detail oriented. You need to be able to search through a lot of data to find exactly that picture as the evidence. So but by having students work through these exercises in what is actually a very real world experiment, and in this case there was sort of a right answer that they were looking for, but they're looking for it in a haystack, and it's the needle that they have to search for and understand that that's a lot of the forensics work. When they go beyond this, they know how to prepare that evidence for court so that they can do the incident report in a way that could be used as part of evidence. And it's important that they understand all of the steps of the forensic investigation pieces. Oops. So, as I said, we wanted to be able to do asynchronous cybersecurity competitions, and our students are used to a totally asynchronous environment. We needed to be able to do this in a way that wasn't, it was like a weekend event, but not exactly. We had to figure out the challenges for being able to do that so that it could all be done virtually. We wanted to make sure that people were still as engaged as they would be if they were next to each other in a room. And we had to figure out how to set up the teams that would work against each other, because in most of these competitions you have several teams and they're all trying to simultaneously both defend their system against intrusion and intrude on somebody else's systems. So we needed a fairly complex environment and one that would replicate the kinds of things that the high-level teams are doing in many of the ground-based exercises. So this shows a little bit of what's available for them, and they're all in a common network. They have the same types of systems, but they're pretty complex systems. So they have multiple servers, multiple operating systems, and like I said, the idea is to figure out how to both efficiently be offensive and defensive at the same time. So be both white hats and black hats simultaneously, and see if they can defend. So the goal for the one of the teams is to make sure that they are both very good at defending their systems at the same time that they are intruding on someone else's systems. And that's challenging. We will be doing this for the first time in October, and we'll do it first with our own students, and then in September, and then in October we will be doing this as part of CyberSecurity Month. We'll be doing this with an open environment where we will invite people from whoever sees the invitation to participate in this as part of members of teams. And we'll have faculty members who are advising these teams on helping them to do the kinds of things that they need to do. So we hope that it will be friendly to both people who are relatively novice at the skills, as well as people who have a lot of experience in their own workplaces and would know how to do these fairly well. So again, a typical kind of team that you would have in a workplace with people who are both relatively novice to the tasks they need to do and some people who are very expert, and see if they can work together to accomplish what they need to demonstrate. So this is the example. There's a security breach that you need to stop, and you get information about IP addresses and the systems that you have, and then you have the basic rules of play. So they'll be using many of the same pieces of software that the students do during the courses, but these are people who may not necessarily have taken all of the classes and will need to figure out how to demonstrate that in this kind of environment. it points out that we have multiple operating systems working in the same virtual environment. You can go from operating system to operating system. So it's a very complex environment for many of the people. Again, we're trying to demonstrate many of the same kinds of things that they might experience in a workplace and that they have to keep track of. Capella has a much more complex environment than this to protect, but at least we're giving them some examples of the kinds of complexities that they might experience in the workplace. So I went through all of that fairly quickly, and there's a lot more that I could talk about or discuss, but I want to make sure that if any of you have any questions, that we have a chance to talk through those questions and understand what it is that you need. I will say that the faculty have talked about their experiences with this, and they're really very happy to have students using the actual tools, that they get experience with real-life workplace examples. The students respond by saying that they also enjoy the tools, although I read one comment recently that said, while I enjoyed the tool, I found it very challenging, which I thought was actually very good. So they started off thinking that it was pretty challenging and then realized at the end it was a great thing to be able to use the real tool. The other thing with this is change happens a lot. If you think about the complexities of these environments, you need to be nimble enough to be able to change the tools, the kinds of assignments, meet new standards. And so you need to be working with people on your team as a university and with whoever else you partner with, in our case with Toolwire, who's able to deal with that level of change. It's not an environment that stands still. We're learning a lot of new tools, new things to do, and there are certainly a lot more clever ways that people have found to attack our systems. So you need to be able to learn a lot of those things sort of as you go. This is not a place where the curriculum is constant for years and years, and all you need to do is occasionally update a textbook with a new edition. So we've been very happy in building out these labs and understanding how students can use them and making sure that that students actually do have the ability to use this environment easily and they don't find it too confusing. So, yeah.
Two questions. One is, inside of the environment, do they have internet access?
So inside this environment, they do not. They would have internet access on their own PC outside of this environment, but they don't have it inside this environment. So because we don't want them to be able to go outside of the environment, they don't have internet access actually inside of there. But again, I don't know how many of you may use Citrix to go into your workplaces, but I may have 2 or 3 different desktops residing on my desktop while I'm working in places. And that's the same sort of experience that the students would have. They'd have their own personal desktop, but they have this environment working separately and not able to communicate with the other environment or outside.
The other question is, do you host this or is it hosted off-site?
This is hosted off-site, but it's a great question because one of the other things that is very important to us is that students don't have to use a lot of different IDs and passwords to be able to go to all these different places. This is linked within our Blackboard environment, so using LTI, we link directly to this. All the student has to do is click on the link, and then they're able to go out to this environment and use that. And then they can save their work also in a format that allows it to be submitted as part of the course room, so it can be graded by the instructor. So whatever work they've done, they can either take a picture of something that they've created at the end, or they can save a file, or any of the things that they need to do. Usually they're asked to write around these assignments as well, so they don't just do the task, they also have to do some writing. So they usually save those files and then elaborate more around them for the actual assignment that they submit in the course room. Yes?
One of the big demands we have from our students is to be able to work with network hardware. So aside from operating systems, is there a way inside of your platform to replicate Cisco ASA switches, things like that?
Yes. The reason why we first worked with Toolwire actually is because of the Cisco issue. That Cisco is something that can't easily or can't be virtualized. You actually have to have the hardware there, and It was something that we chose not to do at Capella, but we still wanted to be able to offer Cisco information to students and the ability to work with Cisco hardware. So yes, we're able to do both Microsoft environments and the Cisco network environments, and we offer courses that go through the administrations of both of those kinds of networks.
The students that are working in that environment have the ability to try to hack a virtual Cisco switch or anything like that?
Yes. Yep, we can set those things up to be able to do that. In the case that we've set up so far, we didn't set up Cisco as part of it, but it's possible because of the environments that we have set up for other places. So the idea is that many of these things are, in many cases, difficult for you to individually work on, to be able to put all the pieces together. And in our case, the extra complication is that everything needed to be virtualized so that students could get at any of it without having to, do the equivalent of going to a lab. And since many of these things couldn't be downloaded onto their computer, we needed to be able to do it in a space that is another environment that they work in. So other questions? So what's your biggest concern as educators or IT experts who are offering security courses to your students? What's the biggest problem that you have?
One that we have is allowing students access to platforms that have enough visibility to the outside world without doing a lot of damage to replicate, real
Right.
scenarios without keeping them too contained. And a lot of times they want to slow the sandbox in our organization that a lot of scenarios you really can't replicate until you start to branch out. It's a little bit more of a real world scenario with more users than just as many people you're something into a room or replicate project or something like that.
So yes, I think that those are all really great examples and things that are very complicated. As as a dean of technology, one of my nightmares was always trying to keep track of all the software that was needed, being able to provide it easily to students, being able to update it as different versions came out, making sure we are keeping track of the licensing arrangements. And so one thing to consider is whether or not there's a partner like Toolwire that you can use to be able to do that, so that it's not quite so much of a burden on you to be able to have to do, because they do have the expertise to be able to do that. And that's what we found, that many of the nightmares that I could have had before, some of that is offloaded to Toolwire, and they have to be the ones to keep track of it. I always like it when I have a service level agreement with someone where I can ask of them to make sure they turn it around and take care of it, rather than me having to do all the digging or my staff having to do all the digging and take care of it. So other questions or concerns? Yes. Yes and no. I think that because we have so many people who are already in the workplace and who are expecting things that they can apply to the workplace, the way we balance that is by making sure we're meeting standards that are set by the best practices that people have set out there. So if we follow some of the NSA, Department of Homeland Security standards, we feel like we're trying to provide the best practices. And yes, there are, all of the people for the most part have doctorates in something related to the field, so they do understand the academic piece. That's why we also want to make sure that students are doing writing around the actual use of the tools. So they're not just learning the skill of using EnCase, they're also thinking through these real world assignments and having to reflect on them, answer other questions about them. In these courses as well, there are also discussion questions that they participate in every week, as well as the work with the tools. So there really is more of a reflective, contemplating, thinking about the kinds of things that you're doing and why you're doing it. The other thing I think that we've pointed out, and there's a panel going on sometime today, I think, on peer-to-peer security. I heard one of the presenters yesterday talk a little bit about it, and he points out that the biggest problem really are people and knowing how to deal with people in the organization. So throughout our courses, we're trying to deal with the kinds of things that actual people do to you and how you're going to deal with that. That it's not just good, that you have to be good at skills, it's that you also need to know what people are likely to do and how to deal with the people issues. So you have to understand policies and training and development of understanding of possible security threats in your organization, the role of the individuals in making sure that they're not releasing information that they're not supposed to be, and also how you keep track of that and follow up on that with using the tools. And that's a great point, that it's hard enough to be able to provide these environments and these tools, but you also want to be able to make, to your point, them academic. And so this allows us to concentrate on the academics of all of these pieces, to concentrate on what it is that we really hope students are learning, what they need to be able to come out with in terms of understanding and the development of that understanding, and the assignments in the way that we're going to go about developing that. What other readings need to be there? So we can concentrate on all of that and allow the tools to reside someplace to be used, but we don't have to think as much about the environment where all of the tools are. And that allows us to really focus on the piece that's most important, which is making sure that the assignments are very real world, that they're complex enough to actually reflect that real world environment. Anybody else? Questions, problems, concerns, issues that you have, and how we've learned to deal with those? And I would say that we've grown in our use of tools immensely. The woman who is responsible for this program at Capella probably started off by saying, I want no tools in my subject matter area, to the point where now she won't run a course that doesn't have the right grouping of tools to be able to actually let students have experience with it. And our experience is that being able to use those tools hands-on in a pretty real world environment makes our students much more employable, they understand more, and the employers find them to be good problem solvers, which is our real goal. We want them to be able to be critical thinkers about what to do in environments where there usually are no right answers, or the field's moving so quickly that you need to keep up with newer answers that are available. So, anything else? Questions? Well, I want to thank all of you, and if you have any questions at all, feel free to come up and ask me. You can ask the Toolware folks about their side of the environments, and I appreciate your attention this morning, so thank you very much.